Hello and welcome back to the Premier League podcast. I'm your host, as usual today. We've just come off our first weekend of the new season, and what a weekend it's been. It feels like football has never been away, which is a good thing for all of us football fans. But even better, I've got a Leeds digital sports writer from LeedsLive. Beren Cross is going to talk to me about the phenomenal game that we saw on the weekend. We saw Leeds come back to the Premier League for the first time in almost 16, 17 years, and what a bang it was. So, Beren, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm a United fan, so for me the Premier League starts this week. But no, I'm good. Honestly, I've had a busy weekend. I'm sure you have as well, with the Premier League being back, and I really enjoyed the game, Liverpool versus Leeds. There was a little bit, you probably wouldn't have seen it because it's more on United Twitter, but there was a big sort of a bit of a bust up. You know how it is on Twitter between some United fans saying, "How dare you watch Leeds versus Liverpool? That is just sacrilege." And I'm just saying, look, if you're not going to willing to go and watch two excellent teams play, then what's the point? Football's about, it doesn't matter. I could go and watch, I don't know, India versus Iran. I'd still enjoy it because football is football. So talk to me about Leeds's defeat, I should say. And because it should have been a victory in my opinion, if it weren't for those penalties. And what was your view on it? Because a lot of people have tipped Leeds to be the dark horses. I've done that in my pre-season predictions, but I don't think anyone expected them to go to Anfield and play like that.
It's strange, isn't it? I think it's easy to make the slip of the tongue as a victory because that's how good it felt. Coming away, Leeds had lost the game, but everybody is so optimistic and positive now coming away from that game. And I think to any non-football people that I've spoken to since who know that I follow Leeds, I think the bottom line for context is that the team they were playing, Liverpool haven't lost at Anfield in the league since April 2017. That's best part of 3.5 years. They drew once at home in the league all of last season, and that was to Burnley in lockdown when the league was basically wrapped up. I mean, they don't drop points at home, let alone draw or lose. So Leeds did lose in the end, but as we all know, they were within 5 minutes of a draw, a 3-3 draw. And as you say, Hader, it's two penalties for Liverpool, and I know we can get sucked into the penalties came for certain reasons, and the penalties were there because Liverpool were applying pressure. But in the cold light of day, you take two penalties away, and it's 3-2 Leeds. Liverpool didn't score from open play, which I suppose is another one of the huge feathers that Leeds will have in their cap coming away from this. All 4 goals are from set pieces. Which of course is a very, very valid way of scoring goals, and it's a valid part of football you need to do well, and Leeds certainly need to improve their defending at set pieces. But it's just all little things. Obviously Leeds, as the underdog, want to take away from it, and they pick out the positive bits and say, this is how hard Liverpool found it to break them down in open play. You're right, everything does feel very, very optimistic and positive, and I think we came into the season, as you say, with a lot of hype. We've followed Leeds for the past 2 years that Bielsa's been there, so we're well aware of how they play and how comfortable they were in the Championship. So coming into the Premier League, we were full of hope as to what might happen. We knew he wouldn't change his approach. We knew he wouldn't compromise, win, lose or draw. He's going to just play the way he wants to play, and that's on the front foot with a high line as they try to against Liverpool. And yeah, it was a relief as well that it worked. I think when Bielsa first came in the Championship, we felt we could have gone one of two ways, and it could have either been brilliant, which it was, or it could have just ended up in disaster and blown up within 3 months because it was such an extreme approach to coaching and running a football club. So that same sort of dilemma was coming into Saturday. We kind of felt this is either going to go really, really well, or Liverpool are going to win 6 or 7-0 because Leeds are going to be so open. But a 4-3 narrow win at the death. I mean, it just went so well for them, and having more possession than Liverpool at Anfield. I mean, just little tidbits like that you take away and think, God, that was just. I mean, you don't do that. Teams don't do that to Liverpool. See the stat that matters, and importantly, the stat that Bielsa and the players reflect on is the scoreline. That's the only thing that matters, regardless of anything else and what we think they lost the game. And there was a tinge of disappointment from people inside the club, which is absolutely how you want them to feel. It means they've got fire in their bellies, and they're going to kick on, and they're not just going to settle for being entertaining losers all season. I'm sure Norwich kind of picked up that tag a little bit last season. They were happy to play well, but in the end, they were easily relegated. So it's a lot to build on, and I think the fact it was Liverpool away does just make you feel very positive about it, despite the fact they lost. This isn't any old mid-table team they've gone and played well to and lost. This is the runaway champions, one of the best teams in Europe, and they've got within a penalty of drawing with them on their own patch.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You look at, it seemed to me that Liverpool lost a little bit of their air of invincibility on the weekend, because, and I think a big factor in this upcoming season is the fact there are no fans. We all, as you mentioned, since April 2017, Liverpool haven't lost. Anfield's a fortress. The fans play such a big part, and I think we saw an element of that, sort of impacting Liverpool as well. But also, what I was most impressed with was just the confidence and almost lack of fear. Teams have gone to Anfield and almost, it's like with United in the past at Old Trafford. You turn up, teams would turn up and they know they've lost. But I didn't see that from Leeds. From the get-go, Leeds were just on it. It was just attack. And what really stood out to me, and we'll talk about Kalvin Phillips later, but that pass was phenomenal for Harrison's goal. You are beaming from like ear to ear. I mean, it must be amazing, because, look, I'm asking you now, are you disappointed after coming so close? But I mean, you're probably not, are you? Because you've seen all the signs that you can mix it with the top teams. Because Liverpool are, look, make no bones about it, they are probably one of the top sides in Europe, and they did not look comfortable. And something that really stood out to me was actually Van Dijk. He looked very uncomfortable all game. And is this something that is part of Bielsa's sort of setup? Can you talk to me more about the tactics? Because I think people know about Bielsa, but they don't actually understand how he plays. So when I look at him, I just think of he's the perfect system manager, where he can make average players, I don't want to say anyone's average, look better because of the system, the style of play. So are you able to talk to me more about how he sets up, and has he done anything differently yesterday or the other day?
No, I wouldn't say anything differently on Saturday compared to how the previous 2 years have been. Clearly, Liverpool have put Leeds under more pressure than pretty much any side in the past 2 years. I mean, Arsenal in the FA Cup was a small taste of it in January. But in terms of prolonged 90-minute assault, Liverpool certainly were the best team I've seen at stopping Leeds. I mean, Leeds at every opportunity were pressing high, but, the simple physics of the game meant that they sometimes couldn't press high, because you've got Salah, Mane and Firmino pressing the defence, and therefore they were a little bit deeper for longer periods than they might have wanted to be. But that's just, it's just how football works. But no, I don't think there was anything hugely different. It was exactly as we expected. I know you nearly called them average players, but you're not too far wrong with that. I mean, the vast majority of this squad finished mid-table in the Championship 2 years ago. Bielsa has transformed them. He's changed their careers. He's changed their careers and their families' lives for years to come, because they are seen in a completely different light now. You mentioned Kalvin Phillips briefly. He was a generic box-to-box midfielder who might have had a steady career in the Championship or League One. He's now he's in England's top 3 or 4 defensive midfielders. He's obviously in the last squad. Him and Declan Rice seem to be vying for that holding role in Gareth Southgate's side. So that's one example of what Bielsa has done to pretty much everybody in the team. So I think in terms of the tactics, without going into like an hour-long lecture about how it works, because my brain can't compute that anyway. In basic terms, it's just an extremely high press, suicidal high press. If they had their way, they would be, or for instance, in the Championship, when they did have their own way, it'd be quite common to see one outfield player and the goalkeeper in their own half, with everybody else in the opposition half, pressing high. I think that the key facet of the tactics that opposition managers mention, which I think is the most telling fact, because you've got another football person talking about it, and picking it out as the most important thing, and that's the man-to-man marking. Now, man marking doesn't sound like a particularly revolutionary thing, especially at set pieces, but I think you have to take opposition managers at face value, and if they're saying that in open play, man marking is extremely unique and just isn't done at all, then you have to accept that is something that is particularly extreme and impressive about Bielsa's side. Every manager in the Championship mentioned it. Klopp on Saturday, his quotes were fantastic as well. There was words like uncomfortable used. He called them killers. He said that they were special. There's no teams that are going to be like them in the Premier League, which I think is going to be the big things, that the Premier League teams aren't going to have a reference point for playing Leeds. They're not going to be able to prepare for Leeds by playing other sides or picking stuff up off other teams. They're going to be very, very different and hard to play against. And so as I say, you've got the I think probably the most simplest terms, it's a very, very fluid formation, but I would say it's a 4-1-4-1, with the fullbacks and the attackers both pushing on so much that it almost becomes like a 3-3-1-3 when they have the ball. But yeah, I mean, they go man for man when they're defending, so they always look to have a man extra in defence and then a man less in attack. So as you would have seen on Saturday, Bamford tried to take care of Gomez and Van Dijk, while Struijk and Koch both looked after Firmino on their own. But then everybody else on the pitch has just got one man they follow. You know, Dallas was following Salah, Ayling was following Mane. You've got Phillips, Klitsch and Hernandez in the middle with Hernandez, Keita and Wijnaldum. Then you had Costa going up against Robertson and Harrison up against Alexander-Arnold. So that's probably the simplest way of putting it. It's an incredibly high press. They pass quickly. They are making so many forward runs off the ball. People may not remember, but the third goal, Leeds' third goal on Saturday, clicks, first touch and finish. There's about 3 different decoy runs going on off the ball there that just completely confuse Liverpool, like a blitz attack almost. So I think people will obviously learn more and more as they watch Bielsa's Leeds. But I mean, that's a rough summary.
Brilliant, mate. Good insight. And you talk about the mark sort of element, especially during the game. You know, not in the box, not in during a set piece. That takes an immense amount of concentration from the players, which we saw it once, and Mourinho was hailed as a genius when he made Ander Herrera basically man mark Eden Hazard about 2 years ago all game, and everyone was like, wow, this is incredible. But the fact that Leeds are doing that and against a team of Liverpool with such great off the ball movement is phenomenal. So I'm going to ask you now, let's talk about Kalvin Phillips because you mentioned him, and then we'll go on to the sort of the last 2 questions. But how highly do you rate him? Because he's obviously, as you said, got his first England cap. I really like the look of him. I'm a fan of Declan Rice, but I'm not sure Declan Rice has the passing range that Kalvin Phillips has. And you say that obviously Bielsa's come in and he's elevated people's careers. How key is Phillips to Bielsa's new Leeds?
He's incredibly important, Hader. He's I think last season when we missed him, I think his absence was felt more than any other player in the team. I think mainly because they probably don't really have anybody else that could do the job as well as him. So that the entire system sort of falls down a little bit because, as you say, he's so important to both protecting that defence, making those tackles, and then initiating the counter attacks. And that passing ways keeps the tactic moving forward, keeps the attack built up. So when he is not there, you do feel his absence, and that does just come down to what a fantastic footballer he has become. As I say, he was very much a generic box to box number 8. That nobody really expected much from. You know, very, very solid pro. Another excellent product from Leeds is Fated Academy. But Bielsa just saw something in him. You know, he'd done all his analysis before he arrived from Argentina, and he'd said, you know, I'm going to make you the best defensive midfielder in the championship without much of a problem. And yeah, he's just been absolutely incredible. You know, it's quite hard for me to now go into the emotion of exactly how much he has transformed, because it's been 2 years now for us, and we've obviously seen this across 2 years, and people in the Premier League are only just noticing. And I think some of his critics would probably say that Saturday wasn't even probably close to his best. I thought he was pretty good, but you know, I've seen a few people saying it was a solid, 6 or 7 out of 10, but we've seen better from him. So I think there's going to be some wonderful performances this season, hopefully. But yeah, he is very, very important. And I think there was very, very serious talk 12 months ago when Leeds didn't get promoted that he would go to Villa. Villa went in there with quite a lot of money, and we all felt it was a very natural move for him to go to the Premier League. We just hoped that he gave Bielsa another year. We'd only had 1 year with Bielsa at that point, and we just felt there was so much potential in that team that if he could just hang on for another year, he would be vital to getting us promoted. And in the end, that came to pass, and thankfully that pressure has now left us. And I think as long as Leeds, obviously first stay up and then establish themselves in the Premier League, there's every possibility Phillips could become a one-club man. He's the sort of guy that you look at in that team that's both good enough and young enough to be around for the next 10, 15 years. But football is very rarely that simple, and all it takes is for one bad year for Leeds and a good year for Phillips, and suddenly people are starting to put pressure on him to move and make more money elsewhere and win trophies.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of Alan Smith moving to United sort of is one of the one that always sticks out for me. I absolutely loved him as a player. Great heart, great passion. Shame about the injuries. I think it really ruined him, a terrible injury. But when I look at Phillips, I actually kind of get Grealish vibes where, they obviously local lads, love the club. And they seem really happy there. So, although you'd love to see them perhaps, obviously, if Leeds don't make that step up into a Champions League or a Europa League club, obviously, if they get relegated, you'd like to see these sort of players try out a bigger, I'll say bigger clubs, more successful clubs, in the current moment. But no, I'm really looking forward to seeing him play. I've watched him quite a bit in the Championship. He's the one player that I've always stood out to me, and I've watched it because the Championship, I think a lot of people would probably argue Championship's probably the best or most entertaining league in the world. I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm from Reading, so I watch. They're not very good, but I watch them here and there. And a lot of my family from Brentford, so Brentford were brilliant last season, and that was a shame. I wanted them to go up instead of Fulham, but no, Phillips is definitely one to watch out for, I think. And let me ask you quickly before we move on to Rodrigo, but Bielsa is someone who is quite the character, isn't he? He's you've always, have you met him before? Have you interviewed him before?
Yeah. I've been in pretty much all of his press conferences.
That's amazing. So talk to me about sort of him as a character, because I watched the Leeds documentary and I've read a few books here and there, and obviously you hear the quotes from Pochettino saying he's my footballing father, Pep Guardiola saying he's my inspiration. These are two of the top managers in the world, but then when you look at, let's say you just look at Bielsa's CV, just in isolation, you look at it and think, okay, well, Marseille, Lazio, you look at Athletic Bilbao, not particularly big clubs, you would argue, and people think, well, what's the hype about? But you've got to delve deeper and actually understand the person, the philosophy, the character. But I got the privilege to watch him when he was the coach of Bilbao back when Man United played them at Old Trafford, and they beat us, and Ander Herrera just completely ruined us. Fernando Llorente was there, Ike Muniain, but it was like football I've never seen before at the time. We got completely tactically outclassed, and after that, I really took time to look into him as a person. But when I watched the Leeds documentary, the one that was on Amazon Prime, what stood out to me was that he said, when I pick a club, it's not just the football club, it's the city, the people. If I feel there's an affinity between the club and the people, then I go to that club. And has he just completely resurrected a sleeping giant? And what sort of impact has he had on the people at Leeds?
Yeah, I don't think it can be overestimated exactly what he's done to the city and to the football club. With it being a one-club city, everybody's very much in the same boat. It's obviously very different to places like Liverpool and Manchester, as you well know. Everybody is pulling in the same direction. It's very much following one vision together, and he's just united absolutely everybody. And it's easy. Of course, I'm biased because I've watched them so closely for 2 years, and my professional life is improved with the football they play. They've obviously got promoted, and now I get to follow Premier League football. So of course, I'm biased about him, but I don't want people to take what we say about Bielsa as bias, because it really is as good as everybody says it is. That's exactly what he's done for everybody here. Anybody that's followed football will know that Leeds they were as far as the Champions League semi-finals in 2001, 2002. Went as low as the third division, League One, in 2007. And now after 16 years, they're finally back in the Premier League. As I say, Leeds is one of the biggest cities in the country, and it's a one-club city. It's an enormous institution, and they absolutely should be, a top 6, a top 8 club in the Premier League. But there's been a variety of poor owners and poor managers that have just conspired to see that not happen for Leeds. And Bielsa has come in on very, very good money. He's by far the highest-paid manager in the Championship, and I think Andrea Radrizzani, the owner, deserves praise for going down that route rather than chucking money at the playing staff. He's took money at the coaching staff and improved what he had, and it's paid off. He's changed the culture of the club. Every single little detail you can think of is taken care of. There are little stories you hear from the training ground whereby there might be a scuff mark on a wall from a football boot or something. Bielsa will notice that and then get into the cleaning staff and say, why has that not been cleaned? Why is that wall dirty? It's just little things. It's all or nothing. he doesn't take the jobs you talked about there. You know, he's very specific with the project he takes. Because he wants the right level of control. He wants to believe the ownership is reading from the same hymn sheet. The contract has to absolutely be perfect in terms of the wording, which is why Bielsa's latest extension is so long. And as long as all those things are in place, everybody's aware of their role within the football club, he is all about you. He will take the plunge, and it is 24/7. You know, this guy, you know, his family will fly over very occasionally from Argentina, but he lives and breathes football. You know, he lives in a flat above a sweet shop in a market town just outside Leeds, and he's a multi-millionaire. But all he needs is a roof over his head, an internet connection, and about 50 million TV screens where he can just watch football. He just watches and analyzes football every waking minute of his life. You know, it is an absolute obsession for him. And for better or worse, you know, some people will say that in some instances that can actually be a downfall for him, and that might explain some of his abrupt departures from various clubs over time. You know, at Lazio, he was at Lazio for 2 days and walked out because promises were broken straight away.
Because of Lotito, the owner, he's a little bit he's difficult. I've got good friends, a Lazio fan, and it seems like Radrizzani's really built this incredible relationship with him.
Yeah, everybody's very, very tight knit. You know, Bielsa isn't. You're asking me about him as a person. He's not particularly personable. He does keep his distance. You know, he doesn't do one-to-one interviews with any journalists. It's very much treat everybody as the same. Everybody is equal. It's in a press conference setting where everybody can ask whatever they want, and he will stay as long as he needs to. The players have all spoken about the distance that he keeps. You know, he very rarely speaks to them individually, which anybody that's watched the football documentary will know is so strange. You know, with the Spurs one that's out at the moment, you see all the sit-downs that Mourinho has with his players. That doesn't happen. Bielsa does not have any personal contact with the players, which some will say is odd, but look at the results it's getting. His explanation for that is that he doesn't want the players to see another side to him. He doesn't want the players to see almost like the mask slipping. He's a very professional person. It's all about business. It's everything on the training pitch. It's all about tactics. And this is how I want you to play. This is how I want you to train. This is how hard I want you to work. But your private life is your private life. My private life is my private life. And I don't want you to get too close to me because I don't want to see the bad side of you. And I don't want you to see the bad side of me because none of us are perfect. And I don't think he wants anything to muddy the waters of that professional relationship. He doesn't want the players to see anything they don't like in Bielsa. So he keeps it very, very sterile, very strict. But it's a lot of mutual respect. You know, it's that way, but that's because Bielsa respects the players to do the right thing, and the players respect Bielsa because, of course, look at the amount of detail he goes into. You know, anybody that followed the Spygate saga will know. You know, I sat in on that lecture that he gave. I mean, it blew me away. I'm not going to say that other football managers don't do that. You know, I know Frank Lampard's response was, you know, we do analysis too. You know, this stuff Bielsa's shown you isn't particularly earth-shattering for those of us that are already in the industry, but it was absolutely ridiculous how much detail he had. I mean, Klopp last week in his pre-match press conference talked about it and said, you know, I'm aware of what Bielsa showed you all in that lecture, and believe me, we have a lot of detail, but nobody has as much detail as him. Well, one of my favourite stories is when Bilbao played Barcelona, and it was obviously Guardiola's Barcelona in their absolute pomp. And they battered Bilbao by like 3-0 or something. And Bielsa and Guardiola were talking after the game, and Bielsa presented his dossier on Barcelona to Guardiola, and Guardiola said, "You know more about Barcelona than I do." I mean, just little things like that are just wonderful to hear. But that's the sort of guy we're dealing with, and he's getting the results.
Fascinating, honestly, absolutely fascinating. It must be an absolute honor for you to be able to speak, you know, be in contact with someone like Bielsa, because for me, I think looking around, we've got some phenomenal managers in the Premier League. Jurgen Klopp, Guardiola, Mourinho is still fascinating when you watch the Spurs documentary. It wasn't particularly enjoyable to have as a manager at United in the last possibly year or so, but still fascinating. And Bielsa, for me, just trumps them all because you know what Klopp's like as a character, don't you? You can see it on the touchline. He's passion, he's energy. Guardiola as well, he's passionate, and you know what Guardiola's like. You've seen the documentary. Mourinho, you know, but Bielsa's he's a mystery. So no, it must be an absolute honor for you and incredible job. I mean, you're very, very lucky. Let's move on to Rodrigo, and sadly he gave away the deciding penalty. And I also run a fantasy football show on this channel, so I was telling people, yeah, look, Rodrigo's a good shout. He's going to be a bargain of the season. Gives away the penalty, but do you expect him to have a big impact? Because he only a few years ago he was linked to Barcelona, Real Madrid. He's obviously at quite an old age for a player to sort of break into the Spain squad. You know, he was playing in sort of in around 29, 30. I think he's exactly the sort of player Leeds need, because while Bamford's decent, I really have doubts whether he's a Premier League sort of quality striker. Maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me on that. But how important is the signing of Rodrigo, and do you expect him to have a big impact?
Yeah, it was definitely one that blindsided us. We didn't really expect that signing to happen at all. You know, we were all being told that in the close season they were very much looking at following the Sheffield United model, and they were looking to basically take the best players from the Championship, not to disrupt the dressing room too much, to bring in some very similar characters. Of course, under Bielsa, you have to be a very, very honest, hard worker, because if one person doesn't buy into the system, it all collapses. So all 11 players on the pitch have to be absolutely full tilt. So when they brought in Rodrigo for, you know, record fee of approaching £30 million, you know, Spain's number 9. I mean, regardless of his statistics and how many goals he scored, you've got to be a pretty decent footballer to be Spain's number 9 at any point in their history. So we were very, very impressed when the signing happened. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about him. Obviously, he was aware that he was playing for Spain, and he scored at Wembley a year or two ago. But you know, he's not a prolific goal scorer, is he? You know, he was at Valencia, who of course aren't one of the top 3 or 4 teams in Spain, and he wasn't scoring more than 20 goals a season or anything like that. So it was a bit of a surprise. But you know, you look at his credentials, and it says it all about why they did the deal. And you know, we're not talking about, like you say, Man City or Liverpool going out there and getting Rodrigo from Valencia as a bit of a low-key backup signing. We're talking about a newly promoted club taking Spain's number 9, and as you say, somebody who was as recently as January, and then the summer before that, linked with, you know, some of the biggest clubs in Europe. So clearly, there's something there, and it's very, very exciting to see what Bielsa's going to get out of him. Because as I've already alluded to, Bielsa gets results out of players, and he improves everybody he works with. So it's very, very exciting to see what he's going to do. He may still not be a prolific striker, but as long as he's performing that role in attack and hassling and harrying defenders and setting other people up, and that's what he's going to be there for. I do think, I mean, I'm a massive fantasy football player as well. And I would tell people, be patient with Bielsa, because he's not going to change the team very often. I think we all expected Rodrigo to be on the bench on Saturday. You know, he's incredibly loyal to Bamford, you know, incredibly loyal. You know, Bamford would go 10 matches without a goal in a title-chasing Championship side and still wouldn't be dropped. And they had Eddie Nketiah on the bench, you know, Arsenal's next big thing. And we were all just scratching our heads like, what is going on? This guy's confidence is shot to bits. He's missing everything that comes near him. Why can't he just swap him out? But Bielsa's just so loyal to them. And this falls back into the relationship that he has with the players. He is loyal to a fault with them. You know, it's crazy how much faith he has in them. But it pays off in the long run. But as we saw on Saturday, you know, Bamford getting, like, we were so happy for Patrick on Saturday getting that goal, you know, for Van Dijk to make the error and Bamford to be there and have the composure to finish the chance off. Because that will do wonders for his confidence. He's a real confidence player. He tends to score in spurts. So I wouldn't expect Rodrigo to come in anytime soon. You know, I mean, in the most extreme case, he only changes the team for injuries and suspension. I mean, I'm trying to explain to the viewers that's how extreme it is. But he only makes changes when players get injured or suspended. I mean, in defence, of course, Cooper will come back in, the captain, and Struijk will drop out. But everybody else is pretty much nailed on now until Bamford either, you know, struggles with form or gets suspended or gets injured. Like I say, I mean, we're obviously in the Premier League now, so Bielsa may well soften on his rules, because they may well start struggling if Bamford isn't quite at it, and they may well need to make the change. But I think longer term, we do expect Rodrigo's class to show. You know, we do expect at some point he will wrestle that spot from Bamford and become the main man. But Bielsa isn't motivated by things like price tags. He's not going to look at Rodrigo and think, you know, he's the record signing, therefore I have to play him. You know, public opinion means I have to play him. That's not how Bielsa works. You know, he's not going to do that. He picks the team that's going to win. He plays a tactic that's going to win, and the personnel for that tactic. So I think we're all hoping Rodrigo pays off, because obviously it is a financial risk. I think we all think it's pretty good business, even at 29. they're coming into the Premier League and they need to survive. They really do need to. They needed to improve the squad. Obviously they've got Robin Koch in defence. They've got Rodrigo in attack, and they're obviously looking at people like Rodrigo de Paul, Udinese. I don't watch a lot of Serie A, but I think everything I've read about Liverpool since has made it clear that
he's excellent. Yeah, I watched a lot of Serie A.
Signing.
Absolutely, especially with Juventus being the ones that were heavily linked with him, and they do want him. But I remember when those reports broke out, I just thought, wow, because like I said, I watch a lot of Serie A. It's my sort of second league, and he's up there with the most creative players. Wow. He's playing at Udinese. He's not playing at Milan or an Inter. But yeah, he'd be a phenomenal signing. I think that's probably what Leeds are missing. That's what I thought, because I know that you guys created a lot of chances, but I felt there was still maybe a lack of creativity in midfield. Someone that can maybe pick a pass, maybe an eye for a goal. I don't know. That was just my impression. Maybe I'm wrong. But Beren, last question, because I know you got to rush off. But where do you see Leeds finishing this season? I'm gonna go for 8th, because they're my dark horses. I think. Wow. Yeah, I think it's similar to Sheffield United last season. I think that people will struggle. They're going to be very well organised, obviously, as Sheffield United were. And Chris Wilder is another manager for me who I have a lot of admiration for, because he's not a Bielsa, so he's not a foreign name. But if you watch Sheffield United, they played some great football last year. But I think that you'll see Leeds do something similar, possibly push for Europa League. But again, it depends on. I think injuries are very big, and it also depends on consistency, because you can have a great start in the Premier League. We've seen a lot of teams do it, but it gets to Christmas sometimes, it can get difficult. But yeah, I'm going to be a bit optimistic, and I'm going to go 8th. So what are your predictions?
Yeah, I mean, everybody here would take that in a heartbeat. I mean, that really would. I think that would represent the top level of what they could achieve. I mean, I think that would be fantastic. Like you say, we've obviously, because we're reporting on them, we're trying to sort of temper expectations a little bit. We're all as bad as the fans. We're all getting carried away after Saturday. But as you well know, all it takes is for a really hard-fought 1-0 defeat at Burnley, and suddenly everybody's thinking, maybe it's not going to be quite as easy as we thought. But yeah, I think we're going to catch a lot of teams cold. I think clearly managers aren't going to purposefully underestimate Leeds. They're clearly going to do all the preparation they need to try and beat Leeds. But I just don't think some teams are going to realise what they're facing with the intensity and the organisation involved. And I think there are going to be a lot of goals this season. I think Saturday was the perfect example of what we might see this year. A 7-goal thriller. Leeds' defence was impeccable in the Championship, but as we've already seen, I just think they're going to leave a lot of space in behind, and I think there's going to be some very, very good attackers that benefit from that. So I think we're going to see a lot of goals, but there may well be 1 or 2 hidings along the way. But I think Leeds are going to batter a few teams as well. I think that bottom 7 or 8 in the Premier League, if you catch them on a bad day, they're really, really average. There's some really average teams in there that Leeds really do over. I think I did a prediction today, and I think I went for 11th, which I think is again sort of healthy, optimistic. But yeah, I think Saturday. I mean, that was before Saturday, and I think Saturday just basically re-emphasised how we all feel about what Leeds could achieve this year. And as I say, they lived up to the hype. They fulfilled the promises we thought they would make. And I think it is going to be a very, very exciting season. I think it'll be very, very entertaining. It will live long in the memory. I think they're going to be a lot of people's second team, as much as Leeds fans hate that phrase of being, because Leeds fans love to be hated. That's the role Leeds have played for decades. But I think with the modern day football fan, especially neutrals, that everybody's going to love watching Leeds games. Like you say, they do run with a small squad. 4 or 5 injuries could be quite challenging for them. But Bielsa again has absolutely zero hesitation in playing the kids. Rightly or wrongly on the pitch, he'll chuck the kids in if he has to. But yeah, I think we are feeling. I mean, we're biased, but we are feeling. We've got no concerns about relegation at this stage, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And Beren, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for the insight. It's been, like I said, I don't know many Leeds fans, so it's been an absolute pleasure talking to a journalist like yourself.
No problem, Hayder. Thanks for having me, mate.
No problem. To all the listeners, make sure you give Beren a follow. We'll put his @handle in the description. Make sure you like this video, subscribe it, share it, because when do you get to speak to someone that gets to see Bielsa, close up on a regular basis? So thank you for listening.